just opened up Reddit to try and find some refund drama stories for Vinted, and the first one that I landed on is actually just made me laugh. So this is the one that we're going to start off with. So hi, if you're new here, my name is Gemma, and me and my fiancé James run a business where we sell vintage and luxury items online, and Vinted is one of the places where we do sell our items, and today we are talking about refunds and how to deal with refunds and who's in the right here, because obviously a lot of the time when you're dealing with refunds, you've got two sides to the story. Sometimes it's not as clear cut, sometimes it is clear the seller or the customer who's in the wrong. So yeah, we're going to have a look at a few different scenarios and see what we think. Let's see who is in the right and who is in the wrong. So the reason why I picked this one is because I've got a little bit of a story about a refund that we had to deal with, very similar to this, which I will talk about in a little second. But this one here, so finally, I'll kind of show you on the screen if I can. So finally had my first silly request for a refund, right? So basically the person's put up a picture of this brand new with tags, bath mat, £4. Obviously I know money is money at the end of the day, but still £4. Dunelm, so a good brand. It says, I know Vinted will side with the buyer if they don't accept my £1 resolution, but oh my god, rusty orange, it is red. So basically, looking at the next slide, the customer has put obviously significantly not as described, which means that it's the wrong colour, or there's something seriously wrong with it. Wrong colour, this was supposed to be red, and no, it's rusty orange. Not what I expected, so would like a refund. So by the looks of it, yeah, we've got a bit more here. The buyer's then gone back and said, it's red, the images are red, it isn't a rusty orange colour, feel free to sell it on, it's sold very quickly and others will definitely buy it. You've also taken the tag off, so you can't return it. That's really annoying. Oh, okay, let's come back to this bit. As I would have asked you to return it for a full refund. And then the seller has offered to send them £1, like as a partial refund. And I think that's kind of all that was kind of said there. So yeah, there's a few things that that are sticking out to me about that. First of all, when I am looking at the colour, it does look red in the original picture to me. However, when I look at the pictures that the buyer has uploaded, it does look orange, in my opinion. Like, I do have to say the colour looks different. However, we all know that depending on the light and things like that, it could just be the light that's making it look more orange than red. However, the thing that bothers me here, which is where, in my opinion, if I was the seller, I wouldn't be giving them anything, is they've taken the tag off, as they mentioned, so now it's not going to be new with tags, so they've decreased the value of it there, and you didn't need to take the tag off to check if it was the right colour. So surely the person who got it would have known before taking the tag off that it was the wrong colour, so why did they take the tag off? And I think they're actually being really nice by giving them £1 because they've done that. So yeah, obviously I'd love to hear what you think. If it had been, that they just had, received it with the tags on, realised it was the wrong kind of tone or the wrong kind of colour, and obviously if the seller wanted to do a refund, that's totally fine. But yeah, there's a little bit, I don't know, because I do feel like the colours are very similar, and obviously if you order something and it was meant to be, I don't know, brown, and it turned up and it was purple, like, yeah, totally, I get that. But yeah, I don't really know. The colour part, I'm not totally sure, but it's a tag thing. That's what gets me, because you didn't need to take the tags off to check the colour. So let's have a little look at some of the comments. The top one, too much drama for a £4 bath mat. Totally agree. And then so many people here saying, it wouldn't have even crossed my mind to buy a bath mat off Vinted. Totally, yeah, totally true. I think it's weird as well. Like, a lot of people thinking it's really weird, but really, you can buy and sell anything on Vinted. It's not, I wouldn't really say that's a problem. Yeah, somebody has mentioned it's chilly, so the colour is classed as chilly on the label. I'd say it's more of a burnt orange, which I do agree with, but the buyer is still chancing their arm. Make sure they're clear to Vinted that they've taken the label off. So yeah, that's the thing that annoys me, is the label part, making sure that they've taken the label off. Yeah, a lot of people agreeing, basically saying that it's not red, it's chili, it's, it's a sort of burnt orange. Then there's sort of people, quite a few people then arguing, saying that no, actually chili's red, it's not burnt orange. So I think that's the thing with colours, is that it's very, when it's colours like that, you can get like a reddy orange, and then you can get an orangey red, and then it just depends on people's opinions really, and how people see colour, because I do feel like people see the subtleties in colour very different. Obviously we've all seen that thing online where some people even see things that are very different, like a dress, it's like some people seen it as gold and some people seen it as dark blue, so you've got that as well to take into account. But yeah, a lot of people kind of agreeing that it's not red, and but it's the tag thing. Somebody else basically saying here, doesn't look red from their own image, but she has no claim to that now as she's taken the tag off. I mean, didn't you see the colour before taking the tag off? Exactly what I said. It's not like she had to unwrap it to see it. How would she expect the full amount back? Exactly. Definitely Vinted should decide and ensure to make it clear that you make it clear that the tags have been taken off. So yeah, that is just something that if that happens, and if they've opened if they've opened things too much or taken tags off or damaged it, then yeah, Somebody's actually put here very interestingly, I always add a note on items regarding colour. Please note, colours may vary slightly due to screen settings and lighting. Photos are taken as accurately as possible. Please message me if you'd like more photos before purchasing. So that's something that if you think, oh, actually, are some people going to be unsure of this colour, that is something that you could do to kind of cover yourself. So that's actually a really good idea. So now going on to the story, the reason why I picked this one. So we had this exact same scenario happen to us. So we had a vintage North Face jacket, and I'd labelled it, I actually can't even remember if I'd labelled it as purple or pink. It was one of them, okay? Now, it was a very purpley pink, or a pinky purple. Like, it could have been, it's one of those colours that was right in the middle, in my opinion, right? So anyway, I'd uploaded it, the person bought it, and then did the whole significantly not as described thing, saying that it's completely, really, saying it was completely the wrong colour and things like that. And we did accept the return, we got it back, and sold it on to somebody else, and they were really happy with it. However, I do feel like recently, and this is something that we're actually currently in the process with something else, is about not accepting returns as quickly. When we sold that jacket, we were pretty new. I didn't want to obviously get a bad review or anything like that, so that is kind of why we accepted the return really quickly. However, looking back on it, I kind of wish we hadn't, and we'd said, look, no, sorry, it's not significantly not as described, it's this colour, because even the pictures that she uploaded were very similar, pretty much similar to the pictures we had on the listing. So looking back on it, and I do believe that Vinted would have sided with us, but obviously you learn, and I do think now I'm a little bit less keen to just process a refund. I will question things a little bit more, and I will say, well, actually no, and I'll sort of try and come to a different resolution, or get Vinted to step in. So if and actually, I was always worried that if you got Vinted to step in and they sided with the buyer, that you would lose your item, but it doesn't look like that's the case. I was looking into it, and I do think that if they side with the buyer, you then just get asked to then process a refund. So I've not had experience of that yet. If anybody else has, let me know. Am I right in thinking that? Because it might actually be worth disputing things a bit more and not letting people just refund because, they don't, they've maybe not read the description properly, they've maybe not read the size properly. Obviously, if it's a genuine mistake on your side as a seller, obviously do the right thing and refund them. But if it's their mistake, or if they've just not read things right, or if they think they're chancing it, then maybe, sort of fight back a little bit and maybe get Vinted to step in. Next topic to do with a refund. So the first one was about colour, issues, which is something that can cause quite a lot of problems. Next one is about size being a reason for refund. So now this message actually gives off a bit of a red flag to me, but I'll read it out anyway. So it says, "Dear vendor, These are great shoes in excellent condition, but unfortunately they just don't fit. I'm a regular UK 9 and sometimes take an 8.5, but there is no room at all in these shoes for my feet. I'd be grateful to return them. So the person underneath has put, I'm not obligated to accept a return and refund because something doesn't fit, am I? The shoes were a 9 on the label. I advertised them correctly as a 9. Okay, so first of all, a little bit of a red flag for me is the fact that the person wrote Dear Vendor and their little face thing hasn't got a picture. Now that's not to say that everybody who doesn't have a picture is a scammer or anything like that, but those are just a couple of little things to kind of like watch out for when people are, you know, messaging you. Anyway, now before we even look at the comments and stuff like that, when it comes to sizing, as long as you have labelled the item the right size, and as long as your description, the size that you've tagged, and the images with the size in it all match, so as long as everything said, you know, UK 9, nobody, if it doesn't fit them, you're not obligated to return the item. Obviously, if you want to, that's completely, you know, your choice. But if you know, have labelled everything correctly and you've labelled everything the right size, you know, you don't need to do a refund at all. And this is actually something that comes up quite a lot with refunds. Like some people, you know, do sort of say, oh, I'd be nice and just do it. Some people are like, look, I can't keep on, you know, doing it. It's like, yeah, there is a bit of a line when it comes to not getting a refund when the sizing is wrong. Like I do think that is down to the customer. Like we've had that quite a few times actually, and it's really frustrating because it's on been items where there's been even measurements put into the description. So just looking at the comments and stuff, kind of what I've said, I buy stuff on Vinted and about 20% of the time the clothing doesn't fit because obviously different stores have different sizes for things. I've never asked for a return, it's just the risk of buying on Vinted, which is true. Bought a hoodie recently. When it arrived, it was way too small. Threw it aside and planned to drop it in a local charity place. And just before I did, I looked at it again, and it turns out I bought a child small. So that's something as well, is to pay attention to all the information in the listing. In that situation, we don't know. Maybe the person did list it wrong, but yeah, make sure that it's like a men's, women's or child's sizes. Make sure you know what the sizes are. Yeah, a lot of people basically just saying the same thing. I would never cross my mind to ask for a refund if I'd bought the right size and it doesn't fit. I would just, you know, give it to somebody or sell it on. A lot of people saying as well, it's at your discretion. If the item was advertised correctly, then you don't have to. I usually don't, especially for buyers who feel entitled to a refund just because it doesn't fit them. However, the nice approach of this buyer would make me consider accepting if they were willing to pay the return postage. So that's another thing as well, is that obviously if it is something that is labelled the correct size and everything, you then have, and if you do want to process the refund, you probably will have to make it, again, it's up to you, but you know, you would maybe have to get the buyer to pay the postage, and then sometimes that can cause a bit of friction if they don't want to, or if they feel like that you should be paying for it, and then if you then have to pay for it, then you are then definitely out of pocket there. So that's just something again to kind of watch out for. So somebody else with a bit of a different point of view, I would accept it since they're paying for the return postage anyway. They were nice in asking. I don't really get people that refuse returns if buyers aren't acting entitled about it. So obviously that's quite, I suppose, useful to know from a buyer point of view, that maybe if you just ask nicely, you're more entitled, that they'll be fine with a return. Just say that person's also said, be wary that they might damage the item or something to force a significantly not as described. You know, I'm assuming they mean if they were to say no. So that's something else to kind of watch out for. Like we have had things over, well not things, but like I think it was one thing that was returned to us. And I remember being quite annoyed because we'd sent it out in a box because we sell purses and wallets and things. We sent it out wrapped up carefully in a box, and we got it sent back in this like a postage bag, not wrapped in anything. So, and I remember being quite annoyed. So that's something that you might want to kind of say if you are accepting a return, is can you please package it in the way that I sent it out to you, because you know you don't want things being damaged. And obviously if you are going to be asking that, it might be an idea to either film or photograph yourself packing up things. Obviously, I would probably say this is more for higher value things, and obviously it is more work, but it is just something that kind of like protects yourself. And then someone else here basically saying, if you ordered a pair of shoes online and they arrived and didn't fit, wouldn't you send them back? I really don't see a problem here. It won't cost you anything. Just relist and carry on. The buyer has been very respectful and polite. And of course, you don't have to accept the return, but I think it would be the nice, decent thing to do. There are lots of things in life that we don't have to do, but we do them because we're supposed to be trying to be decent human beings. And it's somebody's like, because we're not a store and it's time consuming. And then they've kind of responded with, time consuming, what, a maximum of 5 minutes to repost, what a hectic life you must lead. You just confirmed the exact point I was trying to make. Thank you. So yeah, I think people have got very different opinions when it comes to that. I think it's because people are so wary of being scammed. I mean, going back to the example I mentioned before with the colour issue with the jacket that we sold, James had a really interesting theory that he felt that when it got sent out, he was like, I wonder if it didn't fit, and that's her reasoning for sending it back. You never know with people. And again, though, with the size and the thing, that's not something that we you would have to accept a return with. And as I said, returns are completely at your discretion. I mean, we've accepted some returns that I really wish we hadn't, because I felt like the person was trying it on. And then there's been times where we have stuck our ground and we've just said, look, no. So going to a very particular example with an item, we sold this shirt, and it was quite an expensive shirt, and this is where I just don't understand. So it was quite expensive, quite pricey, and we sold it, and the person, I remember it was a bit of a faff getting it sent out to them. I think they were wanting it sent out really quickly because they were going away that weekend, etc, etc. So we sent it out, made sure we got it to them on time, and I'm pretty sure it arrived before the date that they were wanting it. And then I think the day after, whatever their event was, they then said that they wanted to return it because it was too small. Now, this is an item that we put the measurements up online, like, the length, the pit to pit, all that, put the correct size up and everything, put the measurements up, and obviously, made sure we had all the information, got it sent out as quick as we could. As I said, the day after this person had said they had this event, they wanted to return it, saying that it was too small. And obviously that was just massive to me, red flags, because I was like, you've worn that to the event and then you're wanting to return it because it's obviously quite an expensive item. I don't know if they want you to return it to get their money back, or maybe, I don't know, their other half had maybe seen how much they'd spent on it and had thought, you're not keeping that, send it back, because it was quite a lot of money. However, yeah, I was like, no way, like, I'm not returning that, you're not getting to return it. One, you've, waited until after the event, which you told us about. Two, the measurements are on the listing and everything, and I'm sorry, but if I was buying something that cost that much money, I would be making sure that fit me correctly before I bought it off of the likes of Vinted. So we did refuse that return, and luckily it never went any further. They never tried to take it any further with Vinted or anything like that. So that was quite, so that's an example of people potentially just scamming you, buying things that are expensive that maybe they shouldn't be buying, and then wearing it and then returning it and hoping to get a refund. So yeah, that was just my little sort of story example of this kind of scenario. So next return issue that we're going to be looking at is something that you might come up a lot, especially if you're selling vintage things, and it's to do with like wear and people's opinions on how worn or how used something is. So this is something that we have to be very careful of, especially with selling vintage, wallets and purses and things like that. And I have had to make quite a few adaptations to our listings to kind of almost make things super duper clear that there is going to be signs of wear on things. You're not buying a brand new item, you're not buying something that's not got a little bit of wear on the corners or whatever. So I think I mentioned before, obviously, if there's things like a zip missing, things missing, all that kind of stuff, take photographs and, make sure and mention it in the listing. So let's have a little look at this refund thing. So it's not actually a piece of clothing or anything, it's a plushie. So this person's put, unsure what to do here. I did post pictures of the wear on the toy in my listing. It's a vintage Disney plush with tags still on from the 90s, and of course there's a little age-related wear on the belt. I really don't want to split hairs over £2. So it's £2, it's not even like it's like really expensive, but anyway, I know money's money, but still. But a little annoyed, she's acting like she couldn't see the condition before purchasing. I've submitted to Vinted, but guessing they'll take her side. So she put a little update in. I don't think it's been resolved, but she kind of just put, have posted her messages to me in the comments after I put in a return with her paying postage. Found her to be quite rude. So she did actually accept the return, but with the buyer paying the postage. So looking at it, like the person's put damaged worse than shown in the photos, and then she's put fit for the bin. So that's just rude. Like, you don't need to put that in. People value things differently, and this is what I think, especially with vintage pieces. Like, and I think I mentioned this before in our video where we shared one of our vintage Coach bags that we sold went a little bit viral because people had such varying opinions on somebody else who posted a video about the bag, about vintage things. And obviously some people vintage things are not their thing, totally fine. They don't want anything that's got marks on it, damages on it, or it's not even damage, but just wear, signs that it's been used. Totally fine. Just don't buy vintage stuff, okay? But then you've got the people who actually appreciate it and who think, right, okay, this thing's got a bit of a story to it. It's not going to be perfect. There is going to be little signs of wear and things like that. And I do fall into that camp. I can still appreciate the worth of something, especially if it's made of really good quality materials, or if it's got like a nostalgic purpose. It's worth something to you. So to add in fit for the bin, just because it's not worth it to this person who's bought it, doesn't mean it's not worth it to someone else, and you don't need to add that in. That's just rude. She could have just put it's damaged worse than I thought. Damaged worse than I thought. But anyway, so the person, the seller, responded with, "See, you've raised an issue. The damage was clearly shown in the pictures and reflected in the price." The buyers responded, "It's so much worse than I anticipated. I don't see the point even listing it." Again, you didn't need to add that in. That's your opinion. Like, why are you buying vintage stuff if for £2? Like you bought a vintage plushie that's vintage, so already you should know that a vintage stuffed toy is not gonna live up well, especially if it's been from the 90s. Like, what are you expecting? You don't need to add in, I don't even see the point in listing it. I'd be tempted to respond with something like, well, why'd you buy it then? Like, why are you buying a vintage plushie for £2? She says, as you can see, I did post pictures of the damage and said in the description about age-related wear. And then the buyers put, age-related wear is not equal to so damaged. I'm looking for a refund and then I'll bin it, which is what it's fit for. And then the sellers put, but you could see the damage in the photos before purchasing, and she's asked it as like a question. So it sounds like, I don't know. There is 2 sets of photos here, so I'm not too sure if one set of photos is actually from the seller. If it is it got a different background? It does, right, okay, so the ones that the buyer put up are the first lot, and she's literally taken, I have to actually say the seller has actually uploaded clearer pictures of the damaged area. It's like the belt section on the plushie. So I actually think the seller, she's put up clearer pictures to show the damage than the ones that the buyer has put up. So I do actually think in this case, the seller is in the right. But sitting saying things like she's going to put it in the bin, and I'm looking for a refund and then I'll bin it. Like, you can't get a refund and then bin it. Like, for you to get the refund, just so like people know, for buying on Vinted, for a refund to be processed, you have to return the item and you then need to make sure the seller gets the item, and then they'll process the refund. I know some very cases like if you've been proven to be selling something fake, I think sometimes Vinted will just refund you, or if it's like a scam account and maybe the item's not being sold out or whatever. But in a case like this, where the damage is like they may just disagree on the level of wear, yeah, for that buyer to receive a refund, they would actually have to return it. So, and again, it's just rude. You don't need to be saying things like, I'm going to throw it in the bin. And that's actually quite, they're sort of threatening to do that. They're threatening to like throw their item in the bin, especially now that the refund has been done. That doesn't belong to them anymore. So I don't know. And especially, it's actually quite good that the person's put this into the messages, because if I was the seller, I would be taking photographs, like screenshots of these messages, and be sending them to Vinted to kind of back up their case a little bit, and just say, look, what happens if my item gets thrown in the bin and I don't get it back or whatever, because you've got kind of proof that they're doing that. So yeah, not even looked at the comments yet. So just looking at the comments, and there's another update. Yeah, so the person ended on, but could you see the damage in the photos before purchasing? The buyer then has put, ridiculous you want me to pay for the postage, but honestly you can have your garbage back. It's peeling everywhere and absolutely ridiculous you even listed it. Again, you don't need to say that. The seller's put, there's no need to be rude. It was priced appropriately for a vintage Disney toy with tags on for £2. I mean, it's £2. You can see the damage in my pictures. I'm happy for you to send me it back. I have to say, this seller has been so mature and so, like so polite, even though this buyer has been really rude to them and basically threatening to throw their thing in the bin. Like, this seller has got so much patience. And then ironically, the buyer then says in response, it's so childish to not accept my complaint over losing £2. It's nearly £6 for me, which I'm not accepting. It's making a mess and it should never have been sold. Don't know what she means by that. I buy things all the time on here and rarely find myself disappointed. The sellers responded, again, I'm happy for you to resend it back. It was sent to you as advertised. The buyer then puts, where does it say the item is peeling? Every time you touch it, more comes off. And the photos aren't really clear. It looks so bad. Whatever, babes, I'm not arguing all day. Hope you feel good about wasting my money. And then she's posted the photos again. You can clearly see the wear here. I think that's the photos from the seller. That's the seller that said that back. And then the buyer's put, it's worse than that, but I can't be bothered to continue this argument. So somebody's put underneath, result, now respond to feedback, leave yours and block them. And somebody else just kind of, another comment underneath, I mentioned that I felt like the seller was being really patient and being quite mature about it all. Somebody's put, this response from the buyer is what annoys me more than anything. The gall to tell you you're childish over £2 when they are literally the one complaining and being childish. I can guarantee she won't bin it, just wants a free item, and the entitlement from people these days is horrendous. I mean, I'm not sure about if she's wanting a free item or not. However, the whole thing about calling somebody childish, especially when they're saying those things, like there's a way to deal and complain about stuff that you're not happy with, or if you've got something and it's maybe not quite what you expected, that's not being rude and not saying things like, I'm going to throw it in the bin, it's garbage, you shouldn't have even listed it. Like, you don't need to add those comments in. Just say what you're unhappy about, and you're probably more likely to get the refund as well if you do that. So, going back to what I mentioned before about the shoes, if you ask nicely, sometimes that's the better way to go about it, and you probably will get a better response. Yeah, and then somebody else just kind of saying, I recommend taking a photo of you opening the package, like when you get it back, in case they sent back something random or damaged it further. And she said they've actually put, I can't even see the damage that they're on about. I mean, I can see that on the waistband or the belt of the Mickey Mouse thing, there's a little bit of wear, but not anything significant. So yeah, I don't think it's as bad as maybe what the buyer is making out. A lot of people saying just let them return it, but make them pay for it. It's their choice if they do or not. I think that is actually what the person ended up doing, but they're still not happy. And then a few people here saying that they think the whole throwing it in the bin comment, it's only, it's meant to be it's garbage. It's like she's trying to pressure her into giving her a refund, and then meaning that she can keep the item. So that is something to, I suppose, keep an eye out for, because there are people out there that do try and force and manipulate you into thinking, oh, almost like gaslighting you, I suppose, into thinking, oh, the item that you've just sold is rubbish, it's not good enough, it's you know, it's only suited for the bin, etc., to make you then give a refund and not expect the item back, and then that means they get the refund and they get to keep the item. So definitely something to be aware of if somebody is being quite forceful. I would always recommend, if you are given a refund, is to get the item back, whether it's through your cost or through their cost. Always get the item back, because then as well, I think it just teaches certain people that they can do that, and that's not true. Like, you might be kind enough to let them get a refund, but the next seller won't, and then they end up getting, you know, the rudeness because of it. So I think I'll leave it that, all that refund drama there. So let me know what you think. Do you agree with giving refunds or not giving refunds for these kind of 3 examples? Very different scenarios, you know, different things, looking at size, colour and wear and things, which are all things that, you know, are, I suppose, things that we have to keep an eye out for when we are selling on Vinted. So that's kind of why I picked those 3 examples. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you found this video useful, make sure and hit the subscribe button, turn the notification bell so you don't miss any of my future videos, and I'll see you in our next one. Bye!